So when I reach for a word, they're like, well, it's normal. Everybody reaches for a word. I never used to have to reach for a word. I would just say, there's a large group of objects in that area that I need to go get. And I say something like that. But when I was young, I would be like, it's indicative of the assortment of arrangement of groups in which you would bring the allotment into my vicinity. That's how I would talk. And I wouldn't hesitate over those words. You know, people would people were like, you speak funny, because I would use bigger words and I would spit them out quickly. But now I think of those big words, like it's indicative, it's like allotment, like what am I trying to say? So I stop and then I go for a smaller word. But when I use those words, that's how people talk. It's like, well, that's normal. Like I understood what you said it normally. But for me, I know I'm dumbing myself down. Like, that's not the word I would use. Like, there's another word. But if you've never met me before, you wouldn't know that I used to say like a droid, or something like that. Or asputatious, what are all these other words? They're not in my normal vocabulary. I have to think about them. I have to meaningfully say them, rather for them to come out extemporaneously in the flow of conversation. Extemporaneously just happens to be my favorite word, so I can use it easier.
What's your favorite word?
Extemporaneous. And then I'd say blatherskites probably second. But when they meet me, they don't know that. So when I say it, they're just like, well, whatever. But the more and more I learn about different things, like concussions, it's like CTE only got discovered 15 years ago. Nobody knew it existed until that guy people started donating, they started committing suicide by shooting themselves in the heart, not in the brain, because they all knew something was wrong with their brain. And they would tell people something's wrong with my head. And they would go to psychiatric wards and they'd give them medicine, nothing would work, And so they would take pain medicine or Xanax or whatever, kind of like what I'm doing, but they wouldn't get better. Nobody could figure it out. So football players were doing that, and they kept committing suicide. Finally, because they're football players, they were friends with each other. They were calling each other, and they would shoot themselves in the heart. And then they heard about it, and another one would do it, another one would do it. So the family started donating the brains. And you gotta watch the movie Concussion. It's the true story. Will Smith plays the doctor. He's a immigrant from Africa, but he's working in Pittsburgh, and he gets the brains, and he starts cutting them open, and he finds weird things in them, and eventually he discovers a new disease that nobody knew existed before, that happens whenever your head hits things or you have a lot of jerking motions, all the time. So, like, I've been in a bunch of different car accidents, and my head's been hit, and then you have the spinal problems that causes the same thing, and then all my life I had this neck twitch where I would always turn my head to the right and look behind me, kept looking, and I would give myself stingers in my neck to where I'd hurt my neck so bad I couldn't turn my neck anymore. And I still do it to this day, even though it hurts, but it's hard to explain. But it's a habit I can't break. It's like Tourette's. It's like a tick, And I try to stop myself, but I'll do it, and then I catch myself like, fuck, I did it. So even now when my neck hurts, I still do it. And all those thousands of times I've turned my head, caused damage to my cerebral spine and that area of my neck. Because a human being would never turn their neck that many times in their life. I've turned my neck probably 100 lifetimes worth. So the wear and tear and the grinding down of that area of my neck It's, my muscles and the nerves and all that stuff. So it's all fucked up. And I've had so many stingers and things in there. So like, usually you don't get a stinger unless you're playing football and you make contact and you hit each other and you pin your neck down from the helmets crashing. I did it to myself. Like I was just sitting in here in the room on the table. I turned around, looked at the fridge, and then I gave myself a stinger. Like I did that once. I couldn't turn my neck for 2 weeks. I was 14. So add these injuries up over 30 years and get to a point where like now I'm driving for a living and I have to turn around to look behind me to make a turn. I already have a damaged neck with a bad nerve, and I look behind me to make sure there's nobody there, and I'm adding insult to injury. You know what I'm saying? Like I shouldn't be turning my neck at all. My neck should be straight at all times. I just have to turn my body, but I can't turn my body in the car. So whenever I'm driving, I'm literally like damaging myself. Look to the left, damaging myself. I get to an intersection, left, right, damage. So it's like constant being punched in the head every day like a boxer. Builds up. And that's just the neck. That doesn't count sitting in a chair and the damage done to the lower spine, or leaning over, bad posture, damage done to the middle spine. So that's in triplicate. So even if they could fix one, there's nothing they could do for this.